Welcome to part 3 of my free YouTube course about franchise law in Ontario. As we continue learning about Ontario's Arthur Wishart Act, otherwise known as the Franchise Disclosure Act, in this chapter, you'll learn about the duty to engage in fair dealing and legal consequences for failing to meet that obligation. This concept is found at Section 3 of the AWA, and this section of the legislation is divided into 3 subsections. Here you can see subsection 1 of Section 3 says that every franchise agreement imposes on each party a duty of fair dealing in its performance and enforcement. At first glance, this statement seems pretty straightforward, but then again, you can always count on lawyers to make everything unnecessarily complicated. What exactly does it mean to deal fairly with someone? What one person considers fair might not be considered the same way by someone else. This part of the law seems to be open to quite a bit of interpretation. We'll come back to these questions in a moment. At subsection 2 of Section 3, the AWA says that a party to a franchise agreement has a right of action for damages against another party to the franchise agreement who breaches the duty of fair dealing in the performance or enforcement of the franchise agreement. This part of the law gives legal teeth to the idea of fair dealing in a franchise relationship. It says that if one party to a franchise agreement, whether that's the franchisor or the franchisee, fails to act fairly and honestly when carrying out or enforcing the agreement, the other party has the right to sue for damages. In plain terms, this means that if one side acts in bad faith, behaves deceptively, or tries to use the agreement unfairly to their own advantage, they can be held financially accountable. Subsection 3 of Section 3 goes on to provide a little bit more specificity about what is meant by the fair dealing. It says, for the purpose of this section, the duty of fair dealing includes the duty to act in good faith and in accordance with reasonable commercial standards. It seems like this subsection just raises more questions. What exactly does it mean to act in good faith? What does reasonable commercial standards mean? At this point, it's important to understand that laws in Canada do not just come from government legislation, but also from what we call common law. This is the body of law that has developed over time through decisions made by judges in court cases. When a judge interprets a statute or fills in the gaps where legislation is unclear, those decisions become part of our legal framework and can influence how future cases are decided. In the context of fair dealing, the courts have built a deeper understanding of what it means to act in good faith and follow reasonable commercial standards by looking at real-life disputes between franchisors and franchisees. If we take a look at CanLII, which is a free online database of legal cases in Canada, we can see that there are 66 available cases where courts have had to deal with issues related to Section 3 of the AWA, at least at the time that this video was made. This doesn't mean that these issues have only come up 66 times. It just means that these are the cases that are available on CanLII. Not all cases get published here, and in fact, some franchisors require that disputes get dealt with through confidential arbitration, which is something we'll talk about in another video. I've gone through several of these cases, and unsurprisingly, the law gives judges a lot of discretion in how they decide to apply phrases like reasonable commercial standards. For example, in the case of Fairview Donut Inc. versus TDL Group Corp., Justice Strathy wrote the following in the court's official legal decision of a case. The Arthur Wishart Act is remedial legislation designed to address the power imbalance between franchisor and franchisee. It should be given a generous interpretation to give effect to this purpose. Congratulations! You've completed part 3 of this course about franchise law in Ontario. In the next video, we'll talk about Section 4 of the Arthur Wishart Act, which gives franchisees the right to associate with other franchisees. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm Ryan Keeney, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.